All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I am your host, Nathan Crane, creator of the Conquering Cancer documentary series, The Missing Link. Thank you so much for tuning in for this series. We've been hearing such great feedback from all of you and how much value you're getting out of it and how much you're learning from the experts and how inspired you are and what you're learning about diet and nutrition and detox and exercise and meditation and mental and emotional health and healing and spirituality, and how all of this is directly related to our physical health. And I'd love to hear from so many of you. We have a lot of your questions that have been submitted specifically for this Q&A with Dr. Joel Fuhrman and myself. And so we're going to be going through those pre-submitted questions. And if you're joining us live, there is a link below the video. It says click here. You can join us and actually to be able to chat live your questions right there as well. If you have the email that we sent you that has a link where you can submit your questions, you can do that as well. That'll come right into me right now. We'll be able to answer those as well. So we will also have this replay available for you in case you miss any of it. But that is a little bit of housekeeping. I'm so excited to have this Q&A today with all of you with my good friend and colleague, Dr. Joel Fuhrman, who's a board-certified family physician, nutritional researcher who specializes in preventing and reversing disease through nutritional and natural methods. He is the 7-time New York Times best-selling author. You probably know many of his books: Eat for Life, Eat to Live, The End of Diabetes, The End of Dieting, The End of Heart Disease, Super Immunity, and his best-selling Eat to Live cookbook, which is in my kitchen. We cook out of that cookbook all the time. Fantastic recipes in there. All these books are on his website, also on Amazon. Highly recommend every one of them. He is one of the country's leading experts in nutritional and natural healing. He's helped millions of people around the world to learn nutritional methods for helping their bodies prevent and reverse disease. He also has the Eat to Live Retreat Center in San Diego. I've been out there a number of times. Beautiful retreat center that is full. People get to come and live out there for a period of time and learn how to live and eat this healthy way for life and longevity and disease reversal and prevention, with him and his staff supporting you. His website is Fuhrman.com. Dr. Joel Fuhrman, thanks so much for coming on to do this Q&A for our community.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Always enjoy this.
So let's dive in. We've got a lot of good questions already. I'm just going to kind of start popcorning through them, and we'll get through as many as we possibly can over the next 55 minutes or so. There's going to be a ton of value here. Don't worry if your question didn't get answered. There's going to be a lot of these questions are similar as well. So whatever's being shared here, I think will be relevant and helpful for most people, just in regards of general information. Obviously, this is not, I should give a quick disclaimer, this is not medical advice. There's nobody here that's telling you this is what you absolutely should do from a medical opinion. This is general health information, so please just take
I'm not really a doctor. I just make believe and play one on television.
He's not really a doctor. Exactly. Yeah, and so if you need direct medical advice for your specific condition, reach out to Dr. Fuhrman and his team, and then he can help you more directly.
You know what's funny about television is that PBS television called me up and said they've showed my show in repeats. I have 5 television shows on PBS. They showed me in the middle of the night so many times on repeats that I've been on television more than Oprah's been on television. That's what they told me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And Oprah's been on television a lot.
Isn't that funny? I've been on TV so many times. They keep repeating the same show over again, like 3 in the morning or 5 in the morning or something,
Hey, at least you're reaching a lot of people, man. We've got to make a difference. I mean, the cancer rates are exploding, the heart disease rates are exploding, diabetes rates exploding, right? Like it's just
more cancers in younger people, because now with the growth of the fast food industry and people eating out and more junk than ever before, it's crazy.
Well, a recent study that came out, 79% increase in cancer rates in people under 50 in the last 20 years.
Yeah, crazy, right? Crazy.
And there's a lot we can do about it, which is what we're going to get into, right? This is what you see every day in your practice and people that you help is diet and lifestyle is related.
Modern nutritional science has advanced so we know, so we can win the war on cancer. People just don't have to get cancer if they don't want to. We know how to prevent it. Okay, let's get into it.
Let's get right into that then. So Howard's asking, there's a lot of people that talk about reducing glucose and glutamine to fight cancer, for example, the ketogenic diet. But I've also heard testimonials about how a high fruit, high carb diet has apparently worked well for some cancer survivors. What are your thoughts regarding these two apparently conflicting approaches?
Right in with the first question to the most complicated and detailed analysis. That's great. That's great. Okay. We have the most common cancers are like breast and prostate cancer, and they're driven by high levels of estrogen, and they're driven predominantly by fat, particularly the CD36 saturated fat controller activates cancer cells to replicate, especially in conjunction with higher protein IGF-1. The amino acids that drive cancer the most are methionine, but it's methionine, lysine, serine, and glycine. So the combination of saturated fat with high amino acids, that's animal products, animal fats that drive cancer the most. So, but when you're talking about brain cancers, like soft tissue gliomas and astroma, the brain drives on glucose more. They're not hormonally responsive. And the brain cancers are more responsive to keto, to getting the sugar out of the brain. So let's discuss this now. So if you're at high risk of breast and prostate cancer, or you have breast or prostate cancer, then you're best off going on a diet that's glycemically favorable. You don't want to have it be high in refined sugars, but most of what we're not restricting fruit excessively low, like we would with a brain tumor. But the major thing is to be on a plant-based vegan diet, get the body fat off, and eat all these anti-cancer, anti-estrogen, anti-angiogenic foods. And that's where the G-bombs come in. Flax seeds are anti-estrogenic. Mushrooms are anti-estrogenic. They in the right dosage and the right variety of mushrooms, they're just as effective as taking tamoxifen and other anti-estrogens. They suppress production of estrogen in the body. So it's the combination, the witch's cauldron of cancer causation for breast and prostate cancer is animal fat, high animal protein, lack of phytochemicals and antioxidants, lack of the anti-angiogenic and anti-estrogenic plants, which are G-bombs. But of course, seeds, flax seeds, and mushrooms are the strongest. The most powerful anti-cancer suppressive nutrients are the ITCs, the isothiocyanates found in green cruciferous vegetables. So they're a strong part of any cancer program. Now, however, and these cancers are also sensitive, especially colon cancer, breast cancer, and prostate cancer. They're sensitive to protein, and we want the diet to be low in protein. That's why we're willing to give them, 2 fruits with some fruit, because don't forget, when you're eating glucose from fruit, it's absorbed relatively slowly when you have a healthy microbiome. You don't put a lot of glucose calories in the bloodstream at one time. And also saturated fats from animal products distort the shape and function of the insulin receptor. And they also prevent glucose utilization in a cell, which means you have higher circulating glucose in the blood when you have more saturated fat. So more fat in the meal, more oil in the meal, and more animal fats, you get a flood of fat in the blood. The flood of fat in the blood with the fat on the body creates a high degree of insulin resistance, which makes glucose hard to get out of the bloodstream, makes fat a cancer promoter. So fat makes sugar go up in the blood. Fat in the diet makes sugar go up in the blood. When you get your fats from nuts and seeds, you don't get a lot of fat in the blood because the fat is only absorbed at 1 or 2 calories a minute. When you take oil as a source of fat, you absorb 30 to 60 calories a minute. You can take a couple of tablespoons of olive oil, you can get 250 calories of fat in the blood right away. So it's how much fat is on the body and how much fat is in the blood. But when you eat flax seeds and chia seeds and walnuts, you're just getting, 5 or 10 calories of fat in the blood, not 300 calories of fat in the blood. So you're not going to see the fat impact glucose levels. So glucose plays a secondary role, but fat drives the high glucose in the blood. So you can eat some fruit when you're eating the right amount of calories, when you're not overweight, and you're not putting a high amount of fat in the bloodstream. So that means the optimal diet for common cancers is a plant-based or vegan diet rich in green vegetables, onions, mushrooms, berries, seeds. And we're talking about berries, which means berries, cherries, pomegranates, kumquats, loquats, and passion fruit. The low sugar fruits that are very protective against cancer. So we use more wild blueberries, even if they're frozen. We use more blackberries as the anti-cancer effect. And then we methionine restrict if the cancer is aggressive, which means we don't give many beans, much soy, and much hemp seeds. So because we want the protein to be low. Animal products will push the methionine proteins too high, but even plant proteins from too much soy or too much hemp seeds or too much beans. So we usually restrict beans to about a quarter cup a day if we're dealing with a person who has we're trying to halt the growth of a cancer that's growing. All right, now the person says, well, what about keto? Some people say keto response. Keto worsens common cancers because they make the hormones worse. But keto does help brain cancers because your brain runs on glucose. The rest of your body can run on fat, can run on different substances. The brain needs to run on glucose, and brain cells, you get better response to brain tumor shrinkage or brain tumor, slowing the growth of life-threatening brain tumors if people restrict glucose more than protein. So when a person has a brain tumor, we usually give them a vegan keto diet, like vegan keto. We're feeding them greens, avocado, nuts and seeds, macadamia nut, mushrooms, onion, green vegetables. We feed them passion fruit and blackberries and wild blueberries, but we generally restrict fruit more. We don't give, so we're more fruit restrictive and sugar cautious, and we're giving a diet higher in fat and to get more calories in. So and they're getting protein from the greens and the nuts and things, and they can eat, they can eat some degree of beans, like the same amount, the quarter cup of beans a day. But still, we're very fruit restrictive with brain tumors. We're not giving them as much fruit because we want to keep them almost in ketosis and keep the brain starved of sugar.
And now, what's your percentage roughly look like in terms of fat versus protein and carbohydrates when you're looking at it like a vegan ketogenic diet?
A vegan keto diet, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I'd say with a diet probably is, let's say the protein content of a diet is probably, I would say 12 to 16% maybe, somewhere in that range, 12 to 16% of protein. Fat might be, let's see, carbohydrate you want to keep carbohydrate to be in ketosis, not over 30%. So if you add, so that makes fat, obviously, you're eating like 60% of your calories from fat for a keto diet for brain tumors,
Yeah, that's coming mostly from nuts and seeds and avocado.
Avocado, some coconut, yeah.
Yep. So I want to back up a little bit because I want to unpack a little bit of what you said because what you said was a lot. And I want to share an example actually I was listening to a man, his name's Mike Rashid. I was listening to him last night, I think. And this is an example of how somebody who can look incredibly fit, strong, lots of muscle, can actually be pre-diabetic. And he was actually becoming insulin resistant. And then this will explain, for those who are watching, I'll share my screen. Can you see this picture?
Yeah.
This is Mike Rashid at this kind of body figure. This is him talking about it. He was becoming insulin. Actually, this was him when he was becoming insulin resistant. He's basically becoming pre-diabetic right here. And this is a good example of how someone who can be as lean as this actually be pre-diabetic, be insulin resistant and on course for type 2 diabetes, which is what you said a few minutes ago, which is excess fat in the diet and in the bloodstream in combination with large amounts of carbohydrates, right, is what often can lead to then pre-diabetes, insulin resistance, and then type 2 diabetes. So
and the saturated fat, I was just going to say the saturated fat from meat has the most powerful effect at distorting the function of the insulin receptor.
And he talked about his diet, and it was basically a lot of processed food, a lot of high fat food. He was eating all kinds of things, and that's kind of the big issue we see today, right? Is so many people's diet, if they're eating kind of a standard American diet, lots of fat, lots of processed oils, and then combine on top of it, lots of processed sugar and lots of carbohydrates, and then you start getting this cauldrons. Soup that you talked about.
Right.
So yeah, explain that, just unpack that a little bit further so people can really understand. Because most people think diabetes, and diabetes and cancer are directly related, by the way, but most people think diabetes is too much sugar and too much carbohydrates, right? I mean, that's literally still the mainstream thought around what causes diabetes.
Right. That's wrong.
Yeah, even though the research, when you look at the research, it's very clear that that's totally wrong. And somehow most doctors and most prescriptions, diet prescriptions that if you're a patient diagnosed with diabetes, they tell you to restrict carbohydrates.
Right. Right.
Okay, so just
Well,
unpack that a little bit, please.
number one, let's all agree that there's no such thing as a healthy overweight person, and that fat cells on the body are the most dangerous, are almost diseased tissue that leads to diabetes. Because when you have intramyocellular lipids, fat mixed with the muscle, it distorts the metabolism and it stops the ability of the insulin receptors to work. So by being overweight, you're pushing up glucose in your bloodstream, and you can't get glucose, can't get sugar out of the blood, and you're making the beta cells in the pancreas work harder to produce higher levels of insulin. So even if you're not diabetic, even if you're not even diagnosed as pre-diabetic, if you're overweight, you're producing extra amounts of insulin. And insulin is a growth-promoting hormone which promotes cancer cell replication and promotes angiogenesis, which means it promotes the growth of fat by fueling the growth of blood vessels to fuel the growth of fat. And when you allow blood vessels to replicate and grow to fuel fat growth, you permissively allow cancer cells to replicate simultaneously. So body fat is cancer promoting, number one. Okay, now it's not just body fat that's cancer promoting. It's fat in the blood while you're digesting a meal. And you can get dumping of fat, triglycerides from the liver. The body's fat mass can be in the blood, and the fat that you eat can be in the blood. But most Americans get their fats from animal fats and oils, which have a high caloric rush, means these fats enter the bloodstream quickly and in high amounts. And the amount of fat circulating in the blood negates or interferes with insulin uptake and insulin receptor function. So when you have more fat in the blood and you eat a banana or a mango, the sugar is going to stay in the blood higher and longer. Plus the fact that since saturated fats have the most power at distorting the insulin receptor, people on keto diets who eat meat say, I can't eat oatmeal or a mango for breakfast because look, my sugar goes through the roof. I got to stay on tuna fish. Yeah, of course, you can't eat a mango or oatmeal because you're eating so much saturated fat from all the coconut and meat you're eating that it's poisoned your insulin receptors. And now when you eat a carbohydrate, your sugars go high. When I eat oatmeal with flax seeds and mango in the morning with berries, my sugar doesn't even go up because my body fat's low, but because I have a thick and healthy microbiome. And the microbiome is built with mushrooms and green vegetables and onions and flax seeds and beans build the microbiome. When you build a thick biofilm of healthy bacteria over the gut, that utilizes glucose. All the glucose you eat doesn't get absorbed. The bacteria are utilizing glucose, and they slow the absorption of glucose into the bloodstream. Scientists call that the second meal effect. What they mean by the second meal effect is that when you had that mango in the morning, the absorption, the rate of absorption of the glucose from that mango is affected by what you ate the day before. That's why they call it the second meal effect. It's not affected by what you ate that meal, but also what you ate the day before. And the fact that I regularly eat these 4 foods that give me a healthy microbiome, that makes the response to the carbohydrate favorable. People on keto diets, they have a damaged microbiome and damaged insulin receptors, so they can't control their glucoses unless they don't eat any sugar. That's one of the reasons why there's 8 different studies now on long-term effects of different amounts of animal protein, regulating animal protein and carbohydrate in the diet, showing that those on keto and carnivore diets had the shortest lifespans with the most early life deaths. Early life deaths was defined as death before the age of 70. So the most people that died young were people on those high animal protein diet. most early deaths. Even though their sugars are better controlled because they're avoiding carbohydrates, it's still going to kill them from a lot of other causes, and particularly cancer. So now we're going back, or heart disease. So now we're going back to your question about glucose and fat and these so fat, the bad fats increase your glucose, right? The bad fats. But we have to eat the microbiome, the biofilm thickening foods lower glucose, even though animal fats raise glucose in the blood and fat oils raise glucose in the blood. Eating these foods that produce a thickened biofilm lower glucose in the blood. And those four foods are the two raw foods that lower glucose in the blood, you eat them regularly, are raw green cruciferous vegetables and raw onion or scallion. When you eat leafy greens, and by the way, lettuce is a superfood too, because lettuce is the richest source of sulfoquinidose, which is a major fuel for the growth of the healthy gram-positive bacteria that prevent glucose absorption into the bloodstream. So you eat a big salad with lettuce every day. But when you have lettuce and you eat like kale, bok choy, arugula, some kind of cabbage, eat some other raw greens with it, and chew it really well, you're activating the immune system that surrounds the gut, and you're fueling the growth of the healthy bacteria simultaneously. You mix an onion or scallion with that, and it's also very beneficial to the bacteria in the gut. Those are two raw foods. The two cooked foods are beans and cooked mushrooms, particularly eating a variety of mushrooms a day. So those foods produce a certain type of microbiome. And there's this gut-brain axis because our brain and our gut and our immune system all communicate with each other, right? They're all part of this one master computer. And we have the right bacteria, the right bacterial byproducts, the slow entry of calories in the blood. And I'm emphasizing the slow entry of calories in the blood. There's never a lot of calories in the blood because we're not eating processed foods like sugar, white flour, white rice, white potato. We're not, and don't forget, white flour is a sugar equivalent. It's the same as sugar. It floods the bloodstream real quickly. We've talked about that many times. But since we're not eating those foods, we're eating carbohydrates that have a lot of fiber in them, and the fiber interacts with the bacteria in the gut and becomes a fuel for the growth of that bacteria. And that has the effect to ease the glucose in the bloodstream so it doesn't spike. So you're not seeing a spike of glucose in the bloodstream because the type of it's not free sugar, it's fiber-bound sugar. So we're eating, the only sugar we're getting is essentially from fresh fruit, particularly from berries and orange, and kumquats and things like that. Okay, so now we're structuring this anti-cancer diet and you're saying how much fat, how much carbohydrate, how much protein, but we're generally in that range of not low fat, moderate fat, not low protein, protein adequate, but not but not animal protein, because plant proteins and animal proteins have different effects on producing hormones that produce cellular replication. And too much animal protein in the diet drives cellular replication. So both saturated fat from animal products plus the animal protein raises hormones that drive cancer. So any diet rich in animal products is cancer promoting, and seafood is lower in saturated fat and high in protein. But the problem today with being on a seafood diet is there are too many cancer-causing elements in the waterways now, including microplastics and BMAA and other toxins that have permeated the coastal waterways and lakes. So now we have, in modern times, we have the seafood being highly contaminated and a cancer promoter, where it used to be a little seafood might have been okay. So now we are moving people to realize that a vegan diet is not just better to prevent cancer, and even if you have cancer, but it's also better for the environment and better for the future of the planet and better for climate change, warming, polluting, because right now we have a tremendous amount of, well, besides the cutting down of the rainforests and growing feed crops and the pollution from nitrogen runoff into the waterways, we now have a tremendous amount of algae overgrowth with global warming and nitrogen runoff from commercial farmers and animal husbandry. And that extra nitrogen in the water is creating a huge amount of algae, which produces cyanobacteria. And that cyanobacteria produces a toxin that causes PDS, Parkinson's dementia syndrome, and ALS. And we see clustering of ALS around Chesapeake Bay, and where people are eating bottom feeders like bivalves, clams, oysters, mussels, and scallops and shellfish, much higher rates of Parkinson's and ALS, including people eating lake fish, because the lake fish are also contaminated with extra algae in the waterways now from agricultural runoff. So it's a very complicated, you could say, a lot of different complicated causality of now we have a high rate of cancer, but mostly, of course, people eating processed foods and fried foods, and you cook oils, they become carcinogenic. You
Yep.
heat, so very complicated. But we don't have to eat that way. We don't have to get cancer. We know these things cause cancer. We can eat differently. We can protect our bodies.
Yeah, exactly. I add on top of that the excessive exposure to heavy metals, to toxins and pollutants in the food if you're not buying organic or, support growing your own food, things like that. And then the stress, the traumas, childhood adverse events, you compound everything together, and no wonder cancer's exploded. But everything we're talking about here, 90, 95% plus is all within our control. That's a beautiful thing. And what we're mostly focusing on right now is diet. We may address some other issues here as well, but sticking on diet, because we had Diane just chatted in a little bit ago. She's asking, since you mentioned a lot about seeds and nuts, do seeds and nuts have to be soaked to be beneficial?
No, they don't. You can eat them soaked, you can eat them sprouted, and you can eat them without soaking them. You can even eat them lightly toasted. The point is that it changes the nutritional profile, but both nutritional profiles are favorable. They used to think tannic acid up, So no, you don't have to soak nuts and seeds, but here's what I want you to do. I want you to make sure that half of your nut and seed intake is from the high omega-3 nuts and seeds. So that means that the only nuts and seeds that are high in omega-3 are walnuts and flax, chia, and hemp seeds. There's only 4 of them high in omega-3. Walnuts, flax, pumpkin seeds have omega-3, but not as high as walnuts, flax, chia, and hemp. And I'm saying half of your nut and seed intake should be the high omega-3 nuts and seeds that have the high ALA, because they have the more anti-inflammatory and anti-cancer effects. But and also, like we know, the heart is protected by the ALA from alpha-linolenic acid to stabilize the heart against arrhythmias. So we want, but the reason why I can eat those extra omega-6 nuts and seeds and not have any negative effect from that is because I keep my body fat low. And because when I'm eating nuts and seeds and my body fat's low, those fat calories come into the bloodstream so slowly, the body can preferentially burn it for energy. It's the fat stored in your body or too high in the bloodstream that causes a problem, not when you're eating nuts and seeds that absorb real slowly. So that's where oil is not the same thing. Flax oil, walnut oil is not the same thing as the whole nut or seed, because oils put too much fat too quickly into the bloodstream. The nuts and seeds feed a little bit in the bloodstream at a time, so you don't get the spike of fat in the blood. So there's a different animal.
Now, flax and chia, you generally want to either grind right into a powder, blend, things like that, instead of just take the whole seed.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to grind it or blend it in. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And you were going to say something else, sorry.
About what? Was I saying something else? Yeah, but what was I saying?
It sounded like you were going to say something else when I asked the question. But anyway, so those 4, I'll mention them again because that was super valuable, is, at least half of our nuts and seed intake from high ALA seed content, which you said is flax seeds, chia seeds, walnuts, and hemp seeds, and making sure that you're getting not buying the oils, right? Not
Right.
taking flax oil thinking you're getting the same benefit, because most of those oils are rancid anyway.
Correct.
And the oil, we're trying to avoid or reduce oil to reduce the amount of calories coming in the bloodstream, like we're talking about.
And we're talking about overweight people, 1 to 2 ounces a day, 1.5 to 2 ounces a day. But us not overweight people who are more athletic and do a lot of sports, we might be eating, 3 to 4 ounces a day. But if you're looking to lose weight, we watch how much, we don't want to snack on them. We're eating with a meal, and you're not eating too many of them because we want people to be in their caloric window. The caloric window is the calories that you're eating, of course, all healthy food, that if you're overweight, has you making sure you're losing some weight each week, about 2 pounds a week of weight loss. So you're eating super healthy and you're adjusting your caloric window. So so we don't all need the same amount of calories. You have to understand, you have to be the best scientist, artist in your own body So we can devise the right diet for you, and you eat a little less nuts than I eat, because so you can keep your weight going down if you're overweight.
Yeah, that's key, right? If you're overweight, number one is you want to get your weight down to a healthy weight. And two,
Right.
you want to do it in a healthy, sustainable way, following a plant-based, whole food, nutrient-dense diet, as the G bombs, the nutritarian approach that Dr. Fuhrman's talking about. Um, and the other thing, well, I'll bring up Erica's question because I hear this a lot from people as well. And she says, how can I avoid digestive pain and discomfort when increasing fiber content? Whenever I increase fruit and vegetables, I never really have symptoms. I also have diverticulosis and have had flare-ups landing me in the hospital after eating nuts and seeds or beans or green smoothies. I'm not sure why these health foods cause such an issue for me, and if I should continue trying to eat them.
Well, first of all, that diverticulosis are those little outpouching, like little balloons that stick out of your gut from high pressure from eating a low fiber diet. So it's caused by eating a diet rich in meat animal products or high glycemic or processed foods. So over my years of practice, over my more than 35 years of practice, I do flexible sigmoidoscopies on patients who came into me with diverticulosis, and as they follow the diet, they go away, and when they recovered from diverticulosis and have those little outpouchings go away. Now, diverticulitis is one of those things become infected, and there used to be a theory. People used to think that eating nuts and seeds can get stuck in those little holes and make for an attack of diverticulitis. And that was a myth, because when they tested that out, they found that it's not true that eating seeds and nuts had an effect on increasing risk of diverticulosis turning into diverticulitis, becoming infected from people eating seeds and nuts. So that's not something that we see that happens. It's just that people had this idea, and it didn't bear out in the medical literature to be tested to be true. Okay. But when you're not used to eating fiber, you don't have the bacteria to digest the fiber properly, and you could have a combination of small bowel overgrowth, which causes bloating almost everything you eat. You can't tolerate the extra fiber. So you're doing poorly. And so this is what the person has to do, which they have to, the first most important thing is they have to chew to a liquid. In other words, the most important thing for digestion with digestive problems is don't swallow your food. Resist swallowing and keep chewing it till you are intellectually aware that it's liquefied completely in your mouth. So you're swallowing only liquids when you're eating a salad, when you're eating some artichokes, you're eating some potato, you're eating some beans. Nothing's going down in pieces. You kept chewing it till you're sure it was liquefied. And the increased saliva and the liquefaction aids so much in digestion that stops people from getting the bloating and the hard time to digest it. The next thing is beans are a major cause of this issue because they're not used to eating beans. So they have to eat beans more often to get rid of the bloating, not less often. When you don't eat beans, you don't develop the bacteria to digest them, and you bloat when you eat anything that has a lot of resistant starch in it. So they have to have it. So we treat them by giving them a small amount of beans with every meal. That's beans with breakfast, beans with lunch, and beans with dinner, but only a tablespoon. So they're only getting 1 tablespoon of beans 3 times a day. And if they keep that up for the whole month, 1 tablespoon 3 times a day of the beans, their digestive tract now can tolerate more. If they're doing better as the month progresses, they can go to 1 tablespoon with breakfast and 2 tablespoons with lunch and 2 tablespoons with dinner. They can start to increase the amount of beans they can tolerate. And soon they can tolerate a 1/4 cup without having bloating.
Now, you're saying that's just because they don't have the bacteria yet to eat the beans?
They have too many gram-negative bacteria, and they don't have enough of the bacteria that digest beans. The bacteria has to be developed from eating beans. That's why, Hispanic areas that eat a lot of beans, they don't produce that much gas or bloating from beans because they've been eating beans their whole life. You know what I mean? So the trick to getting to digest beans well is just cut back to the amount that doesn't cause discomfort. But once you're cutting back to that amount, if it's a teaspoon, but chew it super well liquefied in your mouth. And then have it with every single meal. If you didn't digest beans well, and I gave you a teaspoon of chickpeas, and I told you to eat it with your oatmeal, but liquefy it super well, you wouldn't bloat from the teaspoon of chickpeas. It's just too little. And I can gradually get your body acclimated to it over time. And then people don't know how to eat a salad and eat raw vegetables. They just swallow. They're used to sucking in like eggs and meat and cottage cheese. They don't know that when you eat these vegetables, you have to have cell walls and cellulose. They have to really chew it really well, super well. So it's almost always they have to eat less, chew better, and of course,
Kind
we
of tight.
sometimes can modify the diet if people aren't digesting certain foods well, but mostly they can handle it. We can cut the beans back. We can increase the starches like spaghetti squash and carrots and cooked beets and sweet potato to make it easy to digest, and gradually then increase the beans slowly and increase the green cruciferous vegetables in a raw more slowly as the body builds up the capacity to digest it. So she can make progress in the right direction. And let me reassure you, it's not going to worsen your diverticulosis and turn it into diverticulitis. The opposite's going to happen. It's going to put less gas and less pressure on the wall of your colon because, as you know, we're talking about transit time, how fast stool moves through you. And when the stool is locked up with no fiber, that's what creates a diverticulosis. The minute you start getting your fiber up to about 50 grams a day, and of course, keeping enough fluid in your body too, your stool gets softer, it passes easier, and diverticulosis can go away. Matter of fact, it's eating ground chia seeds and ground flax seeds that protect against diverticulosis and diverticulitis. The treatment for them, because they add this gelatinous to the substance to the stool, and they make for the stool to pass and prevent constipation. So by having a little flax seeds or chia seeds with your meals, like a teaspoon of flaxseed or chia seeds with a half a glass of water for people who are constipated, it helps soften their stool and makes the stool pass more gently and protects against them having diverticulosis or diverticulitis.
Yeah, that's super helpful. Now, the other thing I want to mention there that I've seen in working with clients is that when they often people blame, oh, it's the plant-based diet or it's the vegan diet that's causing these issues. But when I dig deeper, almost always there's something else there. There's either they're still eating processed food, and so they're saying, oh, it's the plants that's doing it, but not realizing that they're eating all this processed food with all this junk that actually has processed sugar and doesn't have much fiber, and then they're combining that with some fruits and vegetables or with some beans, and not realizing that that processed food or those processed cheeses or processed whatever is actually contributing to the issues.
Oh, that's a good point you made, because when you eat the caloric rush and the processed foods and the sugars, you get bacterial overgrowth of the bad bacteria. Then you can't adjust the bacteria in your gut. And I see people all the time, they say, oh, I can't eat this way, but you look at their diet and they're just not eating healthy enough. They miss the fact that fruit juice and apple juice and the chips they're eating and all the stuff they're eating is screwing them up.
Yeah, they're like, "Oh, I'm vegan," and I'm like, "Okay, let's do a diet journal for 3 days, right?" And then you're like, "Well, there's potato chips, there's cereals, there's
Yeah.
all kinds of processed stuff in there, granola bars, and like, yeah,
Yeah.
but this is all vegan." I'm like, "Yeah, but none of that's healthy. None of that's real food. That's all processed fake food with no fiber that's got most of the nutrients and minerals and enzymes, lacking from it." So that's where your problem is.
Yeah.
When we're talking about whole food, real food, right? We have to think of food that grows on plants, food that comes from the earth. For majority of your diet needs to be real whole foods. So let me go to another question, which is, this is a good one. It's about alcohol. So David's asking, what's the absolute lowest amount of alcohol that is safe to drink that is besides none at all? So he doesn't want to hear the answer none. He wants to know, is it 1/10 of an ounce, half of an ounce, which is interesting because I don't know why anyone would drink 1/10 of an ounce of alcohol.
I don't want to answer that. What's the right amount of cigarettes a person should drink or should smoke? What do you want me to say?
Five,
He
five,
doesn't want me to say no
five
cigarettes.
per day, right?
What's that? Yeah, I mean, what kind
Five
of question
cigarettes
is
per
that?
day.
Alcohol is carcinogenic, and certainly the less you eat, the better. But I'm not going to give an amount that's safe, because for one person who's alcohol sensitive, even a little bit could be bad for them. All right, I'll give them the answer. In the studies coming out of wine consumption with regard to breast cancer for women, it showed that even women who ate even one serving of wine a day had a 10 to 12% increased risk of breast cancer compared to women not drinking. We did not see significant cancer risk from 1 to 2 wines per week. We did not see an increased breast cancer from 1 serving of wine, 1 glass per week, but we did see an increased risk from 1 serving of wine per day. You follow me? So I don't know the right answer, but but obviously use your common sense.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. Alcohol, any alcohol, it's carcinogenic. It's poison
Right.
to the body, right? I mean, there is no real safe amount to drink if you really care about your health. I mean, that's the honest answer. And I think David knows that, right? He doesn't, I think he knows that. He just doesn't want to fully accept it. But David, it's time to accept it. There is no safe amount of alcohol. If you really, especially for cancer, and if you're really caring about your health and longevity. Um, but if you have a glass of wine a week and you don't stress about it, it doesn't bother you, you don't have to have more than that, well, that's up to you, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
that's the whole idea. People, if some people drink a little bit, it makes them want to drink more, you know?
yeah, that's why I don't drink anymore. I stopped drinking years ago because one turned to two, two to three, and I'm just like, well, I just
Right.
don't need it anymore. So there's no
That's why I
benefit
stopped.
from
That's why I stopped snorting cocaine.
exactly.
White flour is cocaine. Eating pizza and bagels and croissants, that's cocaine, guys. All right. I
White
know.
sugar. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So this is just a quick question. Bruce is saying, concern about dietary restrictions. Are there printed guidelines available? So two resources. Yes, Bruce, you can email our support team. We have ebooks on the anti-cancer diet that we're talking about here. We've collaborated on these with Dr. Fuhrman over the years. You can just email our support. They can send you an ebook. But also Dr. Fuhrman's books and cookbooks are a great resource. Which book would you recommend most for people concerned about following a diet specific for cancer?
My most recent book is Eat for Life. It has the whole cancer diet and protocol right in there.
Eat for Life. There you
Eat for
go.
Life, the most recent book. Yeah.
Okay. So we answered that one. Let's see. This is a good question. Cheryl, what are the most important blood work numbers to watch as you commit to killing cancer cells naturally?
I don't know. Most blood. There's these blood biopsies and new technology to detect cancer in the blood, but there's no general blood test most doctors can do. There's special send-out tests that cost extra money, and usually the oncologists, people who can utilize some of these tests, like the Gilari test or the other tests. But I try to get people to live. We all have cancer. Almost all Americans over the age of 50, if they've eaten the American diet, they've got some cancer cells somewhere in their body in small amounts. It may take a decade for those cancer cells to replicate to be seen on a mammogram, or 2 decades, you know what I mean? But the trick is, don't wait till you get cancer to change your diet. Do it now. And don't wait till you have cancer that's measurable in your bloodstream, till you have abnormal bloodstream findings or abnormal mammogram findings. Just start the diet right now. The earlier in life you do it, the better. So we're talking here about that your blood tests can look perfectly normal until the cancer becomes relatively advanced, liver infiltration. And we don't want, so I don't even encourage people to do a lot of testing. I encourage people to do a lot of living and to live super healthfully and avoid doctors as much as they can. So I'm not sure the answer to that question. I know there are some tests available to detect that can monitor the spread of cancers that are advanced, but the technology to detect cancer before it's actually become more invasive or prevalent, or in the body, it's still in its early infancy. There's
Yeah.
not much tests you can do.
Yeah, there's a decent test called the cancer profile test that's able to detect things pretty early. It looks at a lot of different biomarkers specific for cancer, but again, like you said, live healthy, eat healthy. I guess more specific question, someone comes to your retreat who has cancer and they're adopting the nutritarian diet. What are some of the, do you guys do blood work, and what are some of the things you're looking for? Let's say someone's overweight, maybe they have cancer, maybe they have diabetes. Like, what are the things you guys are looking at there?
You know, I'm very much a minimalist in this, because I'm telling people that even following their cholesterol, if we're following if they're eating healthily and they're building up the nutrients in their tissues, and they're losing weight. Their blood pressure is coming down, right? And their cholesterol and triglycerides are coming down. Their inflammatory markers like the HSCRP are coming down, the high sensitive C-reactive protein. We see that the inflammation goes away. They're not going to clot and have a heart attack. Their cancer risk factors are going away. So we see their, we can measure carotenoid score in their skin, but I'm not really, it's measuring the diet and their body weight that's so important. It's what are they putting in their mouth and making sure they're losing weight steadily. And then over time, things improve. Like even hemoglobin A1C with diabetes lags 3 months behind when you see the weight and the diabetes going away where the blood sugars are now normal, it takes a few months for the hemoglobin A1C to reflect that number is so beneficial. But we see 80% of people with diabetes become non-diabetic within the first 3 or 4 weeks. Their sugars are now normal, but the hemoglobin A1C will take a little be higher. The same thing with cholesterol. It may take longer to come down until they have more, their body fat is lower. And we do want their omega-3 index to be favorable, but they're not going to get the omega-3 index perfect right away. It takes time. They have to take the right supplements, eat the right diet, and lose body fat. There's just the body fat on the body, but getting the oil out of the body and the extra fat out of the body and the extra fat out of the diet can make the omega-3, omega-6 ratio start to move in the right direction, because that can be pro-inflammatory if your omega-3 index is too low,
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not really heavy on the testing. I know that
What you're saying,
doctors do a lot of excessive testing and excessive treatments instead of getting the person on the right program. That's the important thing, that you're adherent to the program.
yeah, I mean, you've seen enough patients, move into a favorable direction by following, the diet that you prescribe, that things are improving, right? You know that cholesterol is going to improve. You know that all these things are going to improve because they're following it. When they're with you, they're following it exactly, right? I mean, you know what they're doing. You can see the body weight coming down. You can see the improvements overall. So it makes sense.
Right. And people running to doctors getting tests when they're still not losing weight. You're not going to fix anything if you're not getting the fat off your body, if you're not eating wrong. Stop testing your cholesterol. Get the fat off your body. Stop taking blood pressure medications. Get your fat, lose weight, stop the salt, get your blood pressure down, do it naturally, and everything's going to be fixed up anyway. It's all about how you live. And by the way, because I've been doing this for decades, I have lots of patients who have had metastatic ovarian cancer, who are now survived more than 20 years out, who were told they had 6 to 12 months to live, right? I have many patients with metastatic breast cancer who are now still thriving 15 to 25 years later. The point I'm making, the real proof of your methodology doesn't occur in the short term. You have to look how the person did 10, 15, 20 years later. Did they survive? Did they have recurrence of their cancer? Did they, so I published a study on some of these cases. I published in the International Journal of Disease Prevention and Reversal a whole series of people with advanced cancers that are now alive and thriving decades later. And that's the real proof of the pudding, is what's happening 10 or 15 or 20 years later. And that's why, see, with cancer, let's say it's an aggressive cancer, like metastatic ovarian cancer. Now, this is an aggressive cancer. I have this woman whose lungs collapsed with 4 liters of ovarian cancer fluid, and she has to have chemo because the cancer is riddled through her whole body, and it's aggressive cancer going to kill her. But the chemo doesn't kill all the cancer cells. Some escape. And those ones that escape grow back a year later and going to kill her from the recurrence.
Right.
But now is when the nutritional excellence can enable the immune system to seek out and destroy individual cancer cells, not allow them to grow back again, where it couldn't have taken, of course, that big amount of cancer she had initially. They needed chemo to assist with that, And then you have the slow-growing cancers like prostate and garden variety breast cancer, which are like postmenopausal breast cancer, estrogen positive, that chemo doesn't even work for because the cancers are too slow growing. And there, sure, you want to remove the mass if there's a mass. You don't want the immune system can't go and attack a big lump of tumor. We want to treat the localized mass and remove it. But there are stray cells that escape that mass. And maybe in this case, 5 years later, they're going to come back and kill the person, even if it's a slow growing cancer. But here's where the nutritional excellence can inhibit the growth of cancer cells and cause a recognition, surveillance, and apoptosis of the stray cells that escape the primary tumor that you had removed. So again, in those same cases, the people who have stage 1, 2, or 3 metastatic stage 1, 2, or 3 breast cancer, they're not killed by the primary tumor. They're still killed by the recurrence of that tumor when it comes back. And this is where this dietary portfolio has proved to be effective over time, is preventing recurrence of these tumors coming back. And that the studies that are done on green vegetables and flax seeds and mushrooms corroborate my the patient benefits I've seen, because we have studies, for example, on women who have breast cancer who are now told to eat flax seeds. What happens to them? Less death, 71% reduction in death. Women who have breast cancer, put them on mushrooms and green vegetables. What happens to them? Less death and less recurrence of cancer. So it's not just my experience and clinical experience of my practice. It's all these thousands of studies I've reviewed, and I've reviewed over 30,000 studies to demonstrate that when you utilize this particular constellation of foods, it doesn't just prevent cancer, it still allows people who have cancer to live longer and prevent recurrence of their initial cancer.
You mentioned earlier something along the lines of mushrooms, or maybe mushrooms and flax seeds are as good as tamoxifen.
Right.
Tamoxifen is one of the biggest questions that comes up over the years in working with cancer patients and cancer clients who have breast cancer, who are looking for a natural alternative. They always ask, should I take tamoxifen? Should I continue with it? There's side effects, there's potential detriments to taking it. What are natural alternatives? Can you expand a little bit about mushrooms, flax seeds, and you said it's as equivalent or just as good as tamoxifen? Can you explain that?
Yeah, I agree that I have a lot of women with breast cancer who get depression from tamoxifen, and they get so much side effects from it. And so we want the estrogen to be very low. We don't want to have estrogen promoting their cancer growth. So we measure their estrogen levels and see that they're really detectable. And off the tamoxifen, they go up, and on the tamoxifen, they go down. But when we give them the 3 types of mushrooms a day, and we give them the mushroom pills, the extracts from the 10 mushroom extract supplements, in addition to the mushrooms in their diet, and we give them the flax seeds and stuff, then we measure the blood and we see the estrogen levels are gone. The same results as tamoxifen in the blood.
With just mushrooms, you're saying?
Excuse me?
With just mushrooms, not even flax seeds, just mushrooms?
No, we give them flax seeds too. Okay. We're definitely giving them, ground flax seeds, preferably a tablespoon of ground flax seeds and ground chia seeds mixed together twice a day. So a tablespoon of ground flax seeds and ground chia seeds mixed together once a day. And they're eating mushrooms in their diet, and they're taking a mushroom extract pill, 2 in the morning and 2 in the evening. They're taking 4 of those pills with 10 different ground up mushrooms. And then we measure their blood, and we see that the estrogen is suppressed for both breast cancer and prostate cancer.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah.
So when you said 3 different types of mushrooms a day, are you talking like a small serving amount of mushrooms, and does the type really matter?
The type matters in that we want variety of types. When I make a soup or a stew, I put shiitake mushrooms in, but I put something else with it, black trumpet And by the way, not to promote everything I sell, but I really excited about this because it tastes so delicious, is I got these bags of wild forest mushrooms. And there's a whole mixture of like black trumpets and, oyster and all these crazy mushrooms that you find in the woods, that you find growing wild. And they dehydrate them, and you put them in a bag, and you like drop it into the soup, and they're chewy and they're tasty, and they're all so easy to put in your soup. So I use fresh mushrooms, I use dried mushrooms, and I use mushroom extract supplements too. And we have mushroom chia tea and stuff like that people can have. We have lots of ways they can get their mushrooms in to make it easy for people to get the mushrooms in a delicious form. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and so the forest mushroom blend, you have those on your website, drfuhrman.com.
Right.
You have, what's the mushroom supplement called? You have that on
It's
your
called
website?
Immune Biotech.
Yeah, Immune Biotech. I actually have that. I take that. I
Yeah.
take your daily also, your multi-daily, just
Yeah.
for a men's multi, which is a great, just all around, especially if you're on a vegan diet. I think that's a great, just to make sure you're covering your B12, right? You're covering, in there, you've got 3 or 4 of kind of the, I think you got
Yeah.
zinc, vitamin
Zinc,
D.
iodine, K2, B12, D, the things that you would need on a vegan diet. Of course, people are not getting sun if they're not vegan still could need some extra D too. but we don't want to give them too much. But in any case, we're giving them extra B12, assuming they're mostly plant-based, you know.
Yep. And then so the Immune Biotech is the one that's got, yeah, 9 organic mushrooms plus berries. These are all the good cancer fighting.
Yes, right.
Cancer fighting.
Well, my cancer fighting supplements mix the Immune Biotech with the Ultracell Biotech, because the Ultracell Biotech is really unique because that we've studied the effect on the ENOX2 proteins for detecting early stage cancer growth. And when you use the combination of the turmeric, black turmeric, the curcumin extracts from turmeric, the EGCG and the certain type of EGCG, we have the type of green tea extracts mixed with the curcumin extracts from turmeric. Then the person takes the pill 7 in the morning, 12 noon, 5 p.m., 10 p.m., and then when they make up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, between like 1 and 4 in the morning, they take another one. That's like 5 a day. What it does is that, now I'm not saying I give this to people like you and me, regular people. These are people who have cancer, and the cancer cell is, could be cancer, could be life-threatening. They have a cancer that's detected, that's already been diagnosed.
Mhm.
So by keeping in the bloodstream 24 hours a day, keeping these compounds circulating 24 hours a day, it puts like a brake on the cancer cell replication. We're constantly keeping the cancer cells suppressed with these anti-cancer compounds, which then makes the cancer cells start to die off and become apoptotic. And in this study on the ENOX2 protein, which diagnosed early stage cancers before they can be seen by mammogram, I think it was like, 85% of them, people with a positive test, went back to zero after 6 months of taking a supplement of these conditions, of these substances. So we mix these substances together from the Immune Biotech, the Ultracell Biotech, and also all the things we're talking about with the diet, of course.
Yeah, so that's a mixture of those two. You'll take a serving of Immune Biotech and Ultracell Biotech together at the same time.
No,
No.
the Immune Biotech has the, astragalus, berries, and mushrooms, but the mushroom extracts. But you could take that with meals.
Okay.
You could take that with meals, or 2 in the morning and 2 at night. But the Ultracell Biotech, I want to keep that in my tissues around the clock.
Gotcha. The Ultracell is the one that
I'm spacing that out every 4 hours, or every 5 hours, 24 hours a day. They have it in their body, so the cancer cells never can breathe, can get a breath.
Yep. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, all these are available on your website, of course. Immune Biotech, Ultracell Biotech, Men's Daily, Women's Daily, right? These are just great, high quality, clean supplements. I take them personally. We recommend them. We support
And
all your supplements through Conquering Cancer. So these are obviously we're focusing on diet, right? Diet, exercise, mindset, mental, emotional healing, right? Different ways of detox, all of these things, but some of these supplements that can also help support. I always like to give the caveat, you can't supplement your way out of cancer or any disease, right? If you think you can
that's
keep
correct.
doing the same thing and then just take a bunch of supplements and you're going to be fine, I'm sorry, it just doesn't work that way, right? Supplements are meant to supplement, to support, to
You
help.
got to do everything right. If you really want to win, you got to do everything right. All those things you got to pay attention to.
Exactly. So I know we're down to the last couple minutes here. This has been super rich. Thank you for coming on and doing this. I know people have gotten tremendous value from this. Any last thoughts you want to share with people who are tuning in who are struggling with cancer? Maybe they're like, hey, yeah, I want to do this. I want to follow the nutritarian diet. I want to change my diet. I want to, implement the things that I'm learning here. Any words of hope or any next steps you kind of recommend people as we finish up here?
Yeah, I want to say to them that don't be afraid that you're going to miss something that you enjoyed from eating in the past. Let me just say that the recipes, your taste muscle changes. We make delicious food, and your taste buds will adapt to it, and you don't feel that this is a punishment or something or a stress to eat healthfully. That we love eating this way, and we enjoy every meal like we're grateful for it, and we're eating the best quality foods and making them taste in delicious ways. So forget about this idea that you think this is sacrificial or it needs willpower. Just do it, and you'll learn the recipes, and and your taste buds will change, and you'll see how great these healthy foods, including ice cream, including there's including things making like we're talking about making healthy delicious desserts even, and sauces, and a Thai curry sauce with mixed vegetables. So stop worrying about the fact that you're going to miss these foods that we're telling you not to eat. We have so many delicious foods that you're going to learn to eat and you're going to love, that forget about that idea of this as being going to remove any enjoyment in your life. You're going to get just as much enjoyment out of your life.
Once I started making ice cream the way that I learned from you,
Yeah.
just a couple ingredients in the blender, right? Like I never crave or desire any store-bought ice cream ever again, because all that stuff is so full of processed ingredients and processed sugar. Our ice cream I make for my kids and I is organic frozen pineapple and organic soy milk. And most of the time that's it. Sometimes, because my son likes it really simple, sometimes we'll do some banana in there, some frozen banana, or I'll do some frozen berries, strawberries. Like I'll take any frozen fruit or berries, mix it with some kind of organic plant milk, and blend it, and it makes the most amazing ice cream ever. Now I know, and then also you can add some vanilla and,
My favorite is just frozen banana mixed with macadamia nuts
yeah.
and real vanilla bean powder. And real vanilla bean powder, the organic stuff, that's expensive, but it has anti-cancer effects in it. And it makes the most delicious ice cream. And you can put cocoa powder in it. It's like, it's incredible, So
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
not taking up our enjoyment of eating. That's just people who may think here, listen to this and think that we're just eating too, I just want to make that clear. We love what we eat.
Exactly, exactly. My wife made an amazing, veggie tofu curry with rice
Yeah.
the other day, and it's like that's the kind of food that the more you eat this way, the more you want that food, and the less you want anything else, because you feel better and your digestion is better, right? And you have more energy, and then you go and eat some pizza from a pizza place, and it's like you're bogged down, you're gassy, you feel bad.
Right.
Why would I do that
Drinking
again?
water all night long.
Right.
You got indigestion. You got people just they just be ruined. Anyway, you guys, you can do this. It's
Yes.
not hard. Keep learning. It's easy, it's fun, and it gives you a whole different outlook on the positive of you controlling your health destiny, of what you can do to control your health. It puts the power back in your hands. This is good for you.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Fuhrman. Again, Eat for Life is a great book for everybody here. Go get it if you don't own a copy. You can get it on Amazon. You can go to Dr. Fuhrman's website. All his supplements are there. You can connect with him and his team there as well. He's got recipes and resources. You can learn more about his retreat center. Again, Dr. Fuhrman, thank you so much. I always appreciate you sharing your wealth of wisdom and knowledge. Appreciate it so much.
Thank you. Best of luck to all of you. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
We wish you so much health and happiness. Take care, everybody. Awesome. All right. Thank you so much.
Hey, Nathan, I'm gonna do a cancer summit where I interview other